Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. This is episode number 56, and today we're talking about 0.99 and Eric. But before that, as usual, we're joined by Phil. Hey, Phil.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And as I mentioned, Eric. How's it going, Eric?
Good, how are you?
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabokasa. Easily and securely access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that also supports the Home Assistant project. The configuration is done by the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, or any YAML.
Whereabouts in the world are you from, Eric?
I'm outside of the DC area, based in the U.S., about 25 miles or so from the White House.
Nice one.
Oh, wow.
Do you work in the government by any chance?
No.
No?
I work in the pharmaceutical industry, so depending on who you are, the second most evil place to work.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Not evil in my opinion, but depends on who you are.
Fair enough. Yeah, I guess it pays the bill, right? So it can't be that bad for you.
Yeah, it pays the bills, and what you do actually helps people. So
Yeah.
it's always good.
Yeah. No, I hear that. So welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you.
We'll talk a little bit about what's going on with you, Eric, in a little bit, but just some of the quick highlights. So, Home Assistant. Yesterday was the 6th birthday for Home Assistant, so that's kind of cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I would have joined 6 years ago.
Right? I know.
Yeah, I remember when I was first deciding whether to use Home Assistant, it was only a couple of years in, yeah, I'll go Home Assistant. I'm so glad I did, right? It's just, in the past, 4 years or something, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
And also, as Home Assistant gets a little bit older, so does Nabokasa, and they've also just brought on a new employee. So Bram joins the Nabokasa team to work on Home Assistant. So they'll be working on the front end of Home Assistant. So it'll be good to see another, employee being added to work onto Home Assistant. So if you're paying for a Nabokasa subscription, you're directly helping, Home Assistant and keeping it independent from corporates that would want to monetize it. So, yeah, thank you to everyone that is supporting Nabokasa and Home Assistant.
Also, Andrew's Commercial Brewery. So that's powered by Home Assistant. So we've got, we're getting this kind of idea that home automation people really like beer. So a couple of episodes ago, we talked about kind of a Home Assistant powered kegerator. Now we're talking about an actual brewery. So Andrew emailed in to feedback@haspodcast.io to kind of talk about how he's using Home Assistant. So he said that he's a partner and a brewer at a brew pub in Singapore, and he'd let us know about some of the stuff he's doing. So in his brewery, he's using Has.io, ESP Home, and Nabokasa to control and automate all of their tanks and fermenters. And apparently that's about 24,000 liters of beer. So it's a lot of beer, wow. And that's amazing. So he's got a blog as well. And to talk about kind of what's going on, we'll put the link in the show notes.
That's really cool, right? So now we see commercial uses of Home Assistant, right? And not even as in a smart home sort of field, right? It's here's a proper company using Home Assistant to automate their business.
Totally. So just looking at the blog, it seems to be pretty detailed about it too. So here's what I did and such. So check it out. It's actually kind of neat.
All right. 0.99 lands this week, and as part of that, with all the recent changes with Home Assistant and Has.io sort of becoming together, last release the Docker images got updated so they're all consistent. Has.io now has secret support, so you can now use, and if you're familiar with configuration.yaml and the secrets.yaml, there is the ability for you to put passwords and any secret information that you don't want necessarily committed in your GitHub repos. You can now use the type of syntax in add-ons. So if you want to have configuration for an SSH server in Has.io, you can have that as in a secret YAML file, and you can safely commit your other config up to GitHub.
That's kind of cool. Also, from a device automations perspective, using the automation editor, now you can select specific devices to create automations. So when you're creating it, it kind of makes it easier to kind of say, okay, here's my automations, my conditions, for things like Zigbee buttons and stuff, right? So essentially, because Home Assistant will basically expose all of those as automations, and now you can use those to use them as specific triggers or conditions.
I think this is going to be a pretty big change moving forward, and I've seen it in the UI. I'm not sure if it's also available in the YAML, but right now, if you want to do, for example, an automation when a light turns on, you would have to use the platform state, and then put in the entity ID and what it did. Now, in theory, and if I'm understanding this correctly, I haven't had too much time to play with it, but you can, instead of doing platform state, you can go, all right, when this device turns on, do this.
Yeah.
It makes it more human language as opposed to having to use programming terms like platform state and platform numeric state. You can just target the device you want to do and then use it that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think it hopefully it helps reduce how large if you're using YAML, how large those automations are and stuff as well. So that's one of the things that I'm struggling with right now, is just when I'm trying to figure out what's going on in one of my automations, it's like, okay, let me scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. So hopefully this helps at least bring it down a little bit. So that's specifically for if you want to automate. I would assume it's a device rather than a bunch of devices, unless you nest that automation. So
yeah, well, I guess an automation could have multiple triggers. So if the kitchen light turns on and the bathroom light turns on, do this. Yeah,
exactly. So, but yeah, to your point, it makes more sense to say, hey, if the kitchen light turns on, rather than saying, hey, if the state goes from on to off and it happens to be my kitchen light, then right.
All right, some other new features. SmartThings support, or Withings, how you wish to pronounce it. So they do the smart, health products, like the smart body scale. There's now a new integration for Home Assistant, and they're exposed with sensors in Home Assistant, which is strange because I've had one of these for ages, and I think they got bought out by Microsoft or Nokia, and they got rebranded to Nokia Health. And I believe there was a Nokia Health integration in Home Assistant. I could be mistaken, but now SmartThings has sort of been brought back from Nokia and become independent again. So interesting to see that's come back, and now there's another integration for SmartThings. So very interesting.
Interesting. I never knew that they got acquired and then I guess divested again. That's
actually one of my life goals, is to build a company and have Microsoft buy it for billions of dollars, and then when they ruin it, I buy it back for like a couple million.
And keep the change,
right?
And then resell to them a few years later for another billion.
That's right. Or just keep selling it to different companies.
Yeah.
You got to grow it just enough for failure. Also, the National Weather Service. So you'll need an API key from the National Weather Service, and then you can pull your local weather from there into Home Assistant.
And probably one of the coolest integrations I've seen this year is the iAqualink pool controller. So this pool controller seems pretty IoT connected. So it's now integrated with Home Assistant, and you can do things like it exposes a climate platform, also a light platform. So you can turn on and off the lights in your pool. And I assume because it's a climate platform, you might be able to control what temperature your pool is. So if you're got one of those pool controllers, I would seriously consider integrating it with Home Assistant, because that sounds awesome.
Yeah, that is kind of cool. So some breaking changes. So they're trying to standardize the way Plex servers are connected to Home Assistant. So when you have logins using a username, password, server name, so on and so forth, that's no longer supported on the Plex sensor platform. So essentially that's going to move, and that's going to get replaced with a UI configuration, which at that point, then there you can actually go in and say, here's my Plex username, Plex password, so on and so forth. So, which will then help you kind of authenticate without storing the password directly in your configuration.
Yeah, just put that token somewhere nice.
Yeah, exactly. So also on top of that, the media player and sensor configurations for Plex, those will be moved into the actual Plex component themselves.
And I think we've seen this a lot over the past few releases, things just moving out into their own components. And something else that's happening in this release is the Pi-hole integration. So if you were using a sensor for Pi-hole to track, how many ads you've blocked today or anything like that, you'll now need to move all that configuration into its own Pi-hole top level entity or integration. And as part of that, the monitored conditions has been removed. So before you upgrade, if you are using a Pi-hole integration in Home Assistant, just watch out for that one.
Yeah. Also, the Jewish calendar sensor is now a platform. So that's moved. So if you're using the sensor, you'll need to update your configuration.
And in some other interesting updates in this release, webhooks now support the head and put HTTP methods. So some APIs, for example, the Trello API, they'll need to validate that a URL exists, or an API webhook is valid URL and it has a server at the end of it, and they'll use a HTTP head request. If Trello was to do that before this release, so before 0.99, Home Assistant would actually fire that webhook each time. So now Home Assistant will know when it sees that head request that not to do anything, and Trello can actually now be activated to use webhooks correctly.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I guess it's a little more compliant, just in general.
Exactly. Yeah, with the REST protocol.
Yeah. Also, there's now an ability for template sensors to have custom attributes from a template. So if you're using a template sensor to pull data from other places within Home Assistant, now you can set up the attributes for those sensors as well using the templates. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, makes organizing and keeping everything organized nicely, I think.
Yeah.
Geolocation services will now display an applicable icon on the map. So, for example, if you have a fire nearby, there will be a little fire icon appearing on your map. And if there's an earthquake event, there will be the pulse icon from Material Design Icons. So that's a nice little tweak there.
Oh wow, that's actually kind of handy too, right? Visually, if you look at the map, you kind of can go,
yeah.
Oh shoot! In case you didn't turn on the news that day, or whatever that is, right? I mean, we've all got those days, so that's kind of neat to see.
All right, so Eric, now it's over to you. So this is where we get to grill you. You emailed in to us and said, hey, got a pretty big smart home set up here, and I'm moving it over to Home Assistant. I think you said you've got over 400 devices from in SmartThings that you're moving over to Home Assistant.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've kind of lost count. Yeah, it's over 400 at least.
That's crazy.
Wow.
What do you? I mean, I'm just going to start here. What are you using?
So I have a lot of different devices, and from a protocol standpoint, it's a mixture of Wi-Fi, Zigbee, and Z-Wave. I kind of initially said I'm not going to stick with one or the other, and and given the fact that I have over 400, it probably was a good plan because you can only have so many Z-Wave devices on a network. And I'm not sure. There's probably a limit for Zigbee, but it's much higher. But I started because, like, I think I heard this several times in past podcasts. People started doing home automation because they had a child, right, and they were trying to do whatever they could to protect them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I started. I wanted to make sure when he opened the door, I found out so he didn't just walk out the door. Right?
Yeah.
And then it just kind of ballooned from there. And my wife is probably worse than me because she feeds this addiction by complaining about stuff that's not automated. So I end up just kind of automating as much as I can because of her. So
well, at least she's not the opposite and saying, oh, why have you automated this? Now I can't do it this way.
Yeah, we've gotten really used to not using light switches or anything.
Yeah.
So we've kind of gone the full automation route where we try to get the house to react to us versus using switches or even the Amazon device. I won't say the name, but so we have those everywhere, but we rarely ever use them. And actually, when I hear my wife using it, I realize like, oh, something didn't work, right? Or there's a gap in my automation here.
Yeah.
So, but I've got lots of stuff. Most of my Zigbee devices are from the Lowe's Iris platform.
Okay.
Just because for some reason every couple of weeks Lowe's would just discount everything like crazy. So when you could get a motion sensor back 2 years ago for $7.50 or $6 a piece, I would just go and buy as many as I could. Right. Same thing with the plugs, the Zigbee plugs that are also power meters. I would just load up on those. I probably have about 80 or 90 devices in a bin in my basement, not even installed yet. So that would be in addition to the 400 I already have.
Wow.
Jeez.
And that's kind of why I kind of slowed my automations down, because I passed not not kind of from a capacity standpoint what SmartThings is capable of doing, but they have a hard limit in their smart apps of 300 devices. So,
okay.
So I don't know why I didn't notice until I got to like device, 410 or something. But I added a new light in my driveway, and I, installed a Zigbee switch on it, and I went to configure it, and it just wasn't there. And I did some quick research and realized that there's a hard limit of 300 devices, and there was also a bunch of other devices missing.
Yeah.
And, the reason why I think I missed it was you could have a device that was already configured in a smart app, and they use some ordering to decide what devices show up. And if it was already configured, it still works, even though you can't see that it's added to the smart app. So it didn't kind of remove it from the automation. You just can't see that it's there.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So that's probably why I didn't notice until it was too late. But, so I tried the whole, let me do 2 SmartThing hubs. And it worked fine, except for it breaks the Amazon integration, it breaks the Harmony integration.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's not going to work. So I decided to look into other stuff, and I have one of the people that I work with uses Home Assistant, and he's always talking about it. So I decided I was going to try it, and so far so good. But because I have such a large install, I couldn't really figure out what kind of infrastructure I needed to run it on. I figured buying a Raspberry Pi 3 may not be a good idea or something. So
yeah, especially with so many devices.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't want to go through iterations. So I just bought like a regular computer, so I built a computer with like a Ryzen 2700X that's probably way overboard.
Wow.
For a home
Yeah.
automation system.
Just a little.
Yeah. But so, and then, installed, Home Assistant. So it's running inside Docker. Inside there. So
very cool.
So HAS.io is what I'm running, not the actual Home Assistant.
Yeah. Wow, that's neat. That's so. Just for my own knowledge, how are you finding the scaling of Home Assistant? So are all of those devices over now? Are you still kind of doing 50-50 kind of thing?
I have about 90 or 100 already moved.
Yeah.
And I was doing it room by room, basically. And I also travel a lot for work.
Yeah.
So I haven't been able to finish everything.
Yeah.
I'm actually in the middle of a network upgrade in my house, and it kind of sounds crazy also. My hobbies are like home automation, home networking, home security, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, great.
And so I'm migrating to a new network in the house, and I want to finish that before I finish the home automation migration, because I'm not really sure what problems I'll run into if all of a sudden 90 of my devices switch to a completely separate subnet and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I want to get the network upgraded, move HAS.io over to the new network, and then basically start moving all the devices over to that new network. So
yeah,
it's gonna be a lot of work just repairing like the Zigbee and Z-Wave stuff, but I'll get there.
Yeah.
I haven't run into any scaling issues yet. It's it's very fast. It's much faster than SmartThings because it's local.
Yeah.
So especially. I have a lot of LifeX bulbs. I have probably 53 or 54 of them.
Okay.
They're basically instant, on Home Assistant versus like a 1.5 second delay, as you would see with SmartThings.
Yeah. Well, you're on top of your platform. Again, your laptop is pretty powerful, or your machine is pretty powerful, right?
Yeah.
So that helps as well. Just
I think the thing I'll miss most about there's 2 things I'll miss most about SmartThings, which is the fact that I know you can do this in Home Assistant, right? But I actually maintained several community device handlers in SmartThings. So the LifeX groups device handler. So being able to interact with a group of lights as a single device. And so I maintained that. And there's a lot of people who use that, and that was really nice to use. I used to maintain the LeakSmart sensor until SmartThings came up with their own, and I kind of moved on from that. There's a few other ones, but and then WebCore. Rohan, I think you're the one who uses SmartThings also, right? But
yeah.
You?
Well,
yeah.
ish.
Yeah.
I use it as a radio at this point, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So WebCore is just super powerful.
Yeah.
It's so easy to use to configure automations.
Yeah.
It's so easy to debug. And I had a lot of retraining my mind on how do I build automations in Home Assistant, because it's not the same as WebCore.
Yeah.
And I kind of went directly to the Node-RED path on Home Assistant.
Okay.
I didn't do the automations directly in Home Assistant. So that was also I had to think differently also, right? So every once in a while I was like, I know I can build this automation in 3 seconds in WebCore.
Yeah.
And it's taking me 30 minutes here and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But I'm really just more concerned about the scale. So I'll take the pain of relearning stuff and doing things differently.
Yeah.
Scale.
And as you use it more often and as you start doing that kind of thing, it becomes quicker, right? And I'm sure it was the same with WebCore as well. Just there's a bit of a ramp up time always, right? Unless you already knew it beforehand.
Yeah, I was using WebCore from day one. I was in on like the beta of that, so it provided a lot of feedback. So
yeah,
it's a little unfair comparison because I was like from the beginning just kind of went all the way up in its full capability. So
yeah, fair enough.
So if you're using SmartThings now as your radio for Z-Wave and all your Zigbee devices, do you have? Are you going to be migrating them over to another hardware device to integrate them into Home Assistant, or will you be using, like Rohan does, use SmartThings as just a hub to those devices?
Yeah, I'm generally a pretty binary person, so I actually am not doing what Rohan's doing. Every time I move a device to Home Assistant, I remove it from SmartThings, and I add it to Home Assistant. So I bought the Nortec, USB stick that does Zigbee and Z-Wave.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had no issues with that so far.
Okay.
It was pretty straightforward. I thought I was going to spend like a weekend trying to get it to work based on some of the stories I've seen on the internet, and it was like 5 minutes.
Yeah. I actually went through something similar. So I fired up, I was talking about this a couple of episodes ago, but I fired up my own, one of my old Raspberry Pis, and basically I'm using that for all my Z-Wave. So I've moved most of my Z-Wave devices over, and now Zigbee, I probably should move over. I haven't been bothered to do it yet. So
yeah, the Zigbee integration is actually a little nicer than the Z-Wave because as you're pairing the Zigbee devices in Home Assistant, it kind of pops up.
Yeah.
In the UI versus Z-Wave, you have to just check like did it actually add it, and you can watch the log or something.
Yeah.
So you kind of get more of that experience I was used to with SmartThings, where I could just take my phone, be on the other side of the house, add a device, and I would see it pop up on the screen and I added it, right, and know that it was successful. You could do the same thing with Z-Wave. It's just extra steps. You have to look harder.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's actually that's probably a good point of improvement, right? If you go back to the community with that, going, hey, like, why is it easy on one side and harder on the other? And the honest answer is it's just they probably just haven't gotten around to it. But that's good feedback, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're trying to drive more consumer adoption, which I'm not sure that's the target audience right now for Home Assistant, that's something that would be important. But
for sure,
for me, it's like I can deal with it, right? I'm very technical. I've written a lot of code in my life, and I can figure out why stuff's not working.
Yeah,
it's okay for me. But I have friends that are like, oh, I'll switch to Home Assistant because you like it so much. I'm like, I don't want to spend my weekends helping you, so just stay with SmartThings for now. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So if you've got 400 odd devices in your home, I'm guessing a lot of them are sensors. What's the craziest thing you have added a sensor to?
So I mean, the craziest thing is probably I put a pressure mat in a couch cushion in our family room.
That's awesome.
Because my wife likes to read, and when she reads, she doesn't like the things in the room changing. She wants the lights to turn off all the lights, but make sure that the lamp where she's sitting is on.
Yeah.
And don't have other stuff happen. So basically, it's automation like if it's after 7:00 and this pressure mat this contact is closed, that's connected to like a Zigbee contact sensor with dry contacts, and then dim the light and turn off the automations in the family room, right? And then when she gets up and when it's open for longer than 30 seconds, then turn everything back on, right? Kind of thing. That's probably the craziest one. But my favorite automation types are ones that are based on power usage. So not really monitoring power. I do that every morning. I get like a daily power report email that says your water heater used this much power, your humidifier used this much, all this stuff that I can check for irregularities. Right?
Is that from SmartThings or Home Assistant?
It's currently from SmartThings. I haven't migrated my power monitoring capabilities yet. And the reason is because I want to dive into like the Grafana and all that other stuff. And
totally.
It's just like a whole other can of worms. I probably need a weekend to figure out. So.
Yeah, it's easy to figure out. It's just a time suck because then you start going, oh, what if I can do this and this and this and correlate this and I've been down that route for several things.
Right, but my wife and I we watch a lot of TV. So like these are the power monitoring automations that we use, things like this, where we'll go to bed and I'll turn on the TV, and so the automation is like, hey, if it's after 8:30 and the power of the TV goes above 65 watts, and the master bedroom door is closed, go ahead and start to dim the lights. So I have like a huge LightFX strip in my bedroom that lights up this wall, and it says go ahead and start dimming that slowly over like the next 300 seconds from where it currently is down to like 15%. Set the color temperature to the proper color temperature, and also I have a backlight on the TV to start dimming that up, from 0 to where it's supposed to be.
Yes.
And then it prepares the room to watch TV while we're in bed for like a half hour, 45 minutes. And then when I turn the TV off, it's basically the automation is if the power was above 65 and has now dropped below like 30, like over 3 minutes, start dimming the lights down to 0 and turn the fan on to low, and that kind of stuff to prepare the room to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Right? So it goes slowly. That way you can still like make sure your alarm's set and all that other stuff. And, so we do a lot of automations based on power usage to determine what we're doing, because it's usually I'm using a computer or I'm watching a TV or something like that. Or, we have like a jetted tub in our master bathroom. So if that's using power, I know that somebody's in the tub, right, using it, or if it's, that kind of thing. So lots of automations based on power usage. I think that's probably, in my experience, the most overlooked sensor to base intelligence off of. Right now, they're expensive sometimes, but I just have, like I said, I have like probably like 70 of those Lowe's Iris plugs that have power monitoring built into them. So I use that for most of them, but I do have some of the other ones that go inside of your electrical panel as well.
Yeah. Or do you have any passive ones or anything as well? Like the ones that have like the clamp where you just stick it around the wire?
Yeah. So we have those in the clamped around wires in the electrical panel.
Yeah.
I actually bought my first Shelly device a couple of weeks ago because I wanted to convert my garage door opener from the Z-Wave one that I use with SmartThings to a much faster, more responsive like Wi-Fi one. So I did that with a Shelly one.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
That's neat. So it sounded like you're using power for a bit of presence as well. So like you use the example of your tub, right? Hey, somebody's in the tub and blah blah blah. So, what other kinds of presence do you use?
Yeah. So for room-based presence, it's really kind of power usage and motion sensors.
Yeah.
In most cases, this automation is still set up in SmartThings, but I will be moving it to Home Assistant. At the end of the night, I have motion sensors in my stairwell, so I can tell what direction you're moving in as you go up or down the stairs.
Yeah.
And so basically, at any point after 8:30 at night, if you walk upstairs, an automation will kick off and say, "Hey, check all 30 of these motion sensors in the first floor and in the basement, and like these 15 power monitors, that kind of thing. And as long as they're all inactive, no motion, and below a certain amount of power usage, then you must have gone to bed, right? You must have gone upstairs to go to bed." And what it does, it just checks to make sure that they stay that way for like 2 or 3 minutes. And then if that's the case, it just turns everything off, puts the house like into secure mode, and you're done. So that's kind of a little bit of a presence thing to tell that we've left the first floor and in the basement and have gone upstairs for the night to bed.
Right.
And, and if you're still downstairs moving around, like if I go up, my wife's in the kitchen, filling her water or something, it just goes, all right, well, there's still activity. So I'm just going to wait a few more minutes and then check again.
Yeah.
And it does that for like 15 minutes. And then it just gives up after that. And then the next time somebody walks upstairs, it just starts over and tries to turn everything off again. So that's, so most of my room-based presence is through motion sensors or power. It's the same thing like in my office. If I turn my TV on, which I primarily only use for gaming, play Xbox, it knows like to dim the lights and turn the fan on and that kind of stuff. And then when the TV goes off, it knows to undo all that stuff. But so
that's kind of
cool. Overall presence, I use the phone, right? My phone to tell whether I'm home or not.
Yeah.
And I actually haven't. This has been one of my pain points in Home Assistant, is finding something that worked as nice as what I had in SmartThings. I do like the fact I can pick like 10 different things to act as a presence sensor.
Yeah.
And do some, logic with the Bayesian sensor and other things to figure that out. But Adrian, the guy who wrote WebCore, who actually now works for SmartThings, he built a companion app for your mobile phone that gave you a lot of the zoning features that you have in Home Assistant.
Yep.
You can say like, here's work, here's whatever, here's, and it worked almost basically all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Perfectly. And I haven't quite found the same thing with Home Assistant yet. So
have you tried the Home Assistant app or something like OwnTracks?
I use the Home Assistant app. I also have the beta of the
Mm-hmm.
version. And I haven't really tested the beta version yet to see if it does better with presence. I kind of put the presence stuff on pause while I do some other things.
Sure.
I'm sure that it might be better in that case. I tried using Life 360 a little bit, but I didn't really, I didn't spend a whole lot of time with that either, right? It's kind of one of those things where I'll get to the presence thing at some point in the future just because there's so much to do. It wasn't like,
sure.
It didn't just kind of work out of the box, so I'll have to figure that out. But
yeah. I find the beta app gives you, compared to the regular one, it gives you more kind of a ton more information as well. So you'll notice, especially if you're in iOS, it'll ask for more. It'll ask for like health data and this and that. And the reason it's asking for that kind of stuff is so that it can determine, hey, what direction are you walking? So there's some cool stuff in there that may be worth checking out. And I find that it's actually. So I used to use the SmartThings app specifically for presence as well, right? So I used to keep that on my phone and, enable location, have it upgrade in the background, so on and so forth. I found that was amazing until Robbie dropped the iOS app, and we had him on the show one episode a while ago, and we were chatting, and I was like, and I think a few weeks prior I had just flipped over, and I was like, man, this is amazing, right? Like, and so I found that it was a lot quicker, and there was a lot more stuff behind it, and the beta app is actually pretty decent. Now I'm saying that as my location, my presence is broken on it, but I think that's just something I'm doing that's causing it to break.
Yeah, I think actually what happened was I switched over to, I wanted to do some customizations. I ended up having to switch over to the, UI Lovelace.yaml versus just configuring stuff through the UI.
Yeah.
And what actually happened was the page that has all of my presence sensors on it went away. And I haven't had a chance to rebuild it through the YAML yet, which I think that's actually why I kind of paused fixing the presence sensors, because I started focusing on everything else, like creating cool graphs for power monitoring and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I actually was just clicking here saying, like, I wonder if it says I'm present now or not. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's not even there because I don't have it configured to even look at it anymore. I will be doing that. It's just there's a lot to do.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I am frustrated about with Home Assistant, and I think it's like one of these things I'm like, oh, these Home Assistant people are crazy. What's up with the fans? Like in SmartThings, I can take a fan, like a ceiling fan, and say, put this fan to 42%.
Right.
And I can't do that with Home Assistant. It's low, medium, or high. And it's like, my wife's like, I don't want medium and I don't want low. I want that spot in between.
Right in between. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I've never actually played with the fan component. So that's actually kind of.
Are you sure? Because I have the Dyson Airblade just behind me, and I'm pretty sure I can set that to. That has a range of 1 to 10. I can set that to anything I like. I'm pretty sure it would depend on the type of fan integration that it is.
Yeah, so all mine are Zigbee Z-Wave fan controllers that are
right
kind of in the wall plate. And when I look in the forums and stuff, there's other people have asked this question. I'm not the first, but there's not many, and it's always like, well, most fan controllers just do low, medium, and high. And when you look at the fan integration or platform, it kind of just that's it. It's just low, medium, and high. And so I can't, pick that spot in between. And if it was, with SmartThings, you could just say, okay, I'll accept that, but I'm going to go into like the device handler and say, well, low is 40% and medium is 55%,
right.
High is 70%, right? And it's not that straightforward with Home Assistant, but
yeah,
that's not, there's nothing here that's a deal breaker. The fact that I can probably add all my devices and use them all is the key, right? It's just, that's just one of the things I'm like, my wife's like, you can do all this crazy stuff, but you can't like set the fan to 40%. And I'm like,
that's interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if that is a limitation on the Open Z-Wave library, which Home Assistant uses.
It could be.
Because I've noticed a few things where, I'm using a Vera Lite controller because there was some Australian Z-Wave stuff here that just wouldn't work with Open Z-Wave. So I went out and just got it to do it that way. So there might be, some restriction there with Open Z-Wave, where they restrict, all fans have to be low, medium, or high. And there might be a configuration in the XML that you can go in and adjust what they are. Or there may even be a service against the Open Z-Wave library that you can call. Maybe you can set like a node property against that fan. And I'm just thinking out loud, so I have no idea if this is even possible. You could create a light in Home Assistant that would then call that service. So, you could say, turn on fan light to 50%. And it would then call that Z-Wave service to then go out to the node and set the fan to 50%. It would look like a light to, the Amazon Echo and on the UI, but it would underneath it would actually be controlling the fan's percentage.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't thought about targeting
Yeah.
specific node within the device. So that's probably something I'll look at. And honestly, that's also one of the things that's much different than SmartThings. SmartThings is like, you add a sensor and all of its actual properties are like part of a single sensor.
Right.
So when I say in SmartThings I have 400 plus devices, it's literally 400 physical things, and I imagine that when I add those to Home Assistant, I'm going to end up with like 1,500 or 1,800 entities,
sensors and stuff. Yeah.
So I actually didn't think about targeting the specifics within the Z-Wave device. I'll have to look at that today. Actually, that's something I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, the other thing, I'm not sure if it's possible with Z-Wave. I know in Zigbee you can change the device classes, right? So kind of like what Phil was saying, where, hey, use this binary sensor actually as a water leak detector, right? So it goes from 0 or 1 or on or off to now wet or dry, and like that kind of thing, right? So there's little more.
Yeah.
And you might be able to change the class of that sensor as a whole to have it a little more granular. I'm not sure. So.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that. I'll have to look up how to do that.
Yeah, I've done it through the UI in my Haz.io instance where I'm running Zigbee on there. So like again, most of my sensors, I actually got a bunch of SmartThings sensors for super cheap on, I don't remember, it's like Black Friday or some of that. And, or I think it was Amazon Prime days, but Best Buy, because Amazon effect, right? Everybody's now having a sale because Amazon's having a sale. And picked up a bunch of those sensors, and a lot of them actually come in as generic sensors. And you can just go in and change the class on them. And now they each and that happens on a per sensor basis, not on a per device basis. But yeah, you can change it up and it'll say, again, something small like, hey, this, I can say, yep, it's still a binary sensor, but it's no longer a generic sensor. It's now a motion sensor or a water leak detector or what have you. So it gives you a little better results and a little more consistency as well in terms of just in your logic, you're saying, hey, is it wet? Is it dry? Not, is it on or off, right? Like if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But I just want to clarify that there aren't. So the device class is used for the interface. So, for example, if you have a motion sensor, in your YAML, you still have, motion sensor goes to on or off because it's a binary sensor. You don't do motion detected or clear in your YAML file.
That's a good point, actually. You're right.
So, yeah, it updates the UI, but it don't...
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's my mistake. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm sure there's a way around that, though.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I've seen people use templates for stuff like that, but I don't know if that'll really solve your...
I think in a couple of releases ago, there might have been a template fan or template climate platform that was added where you could actually, call different Home Assistant services to do things. So that's where you might be able to create a fan entity that, goes ahead and calls, that Z-Wave service to set the fan at that particular temperature.
Yeah, because like right now the fan platform, the set speed only takes low, medium, and high. It doesn't take a percentage.
Yeah.
But like even on the actual controller in the wall, I can only do low, medium, and high. But I can send it a message that, through SmartThings and set it to a different percentage. And one of the other things that's really nice about being able to do that with the fan is in SmartThings somebody wrote a device handler for their ceiling fans, and no matter what speed you set it to, it sets it to high first, and then after about 10 seconds, it takes it down to the setting you wanted it. Because when you set a fan, at least here in the U.S. on low, you get like that annoying fan whine at first.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't have enough power to start moving, right? And so it's kind of struggling to start moving. And it's also bad for the fan. So that device handler says, okay, well, go to high immediately, give it as much power as it needs to start moving, and then take it back down to low after 10 seconds. And that way you don't get that fan whine when it starts up.
Interesting.
Which is pretty cool. But it's like first world problems. It's like.
Well, it's good. You're. I mean, at the end of the day, to your point, it's probably not great for the motor to do that, right? So it's give it what it wants, essentially.
Yeah.
If I was to solve that problem in Home Assistant, and I didn't want to go ahead and I just wanted to do it, in YAML, I would create an automation that would watch for the fan to turn on, and then it would go and see, all right, you've put it on a low setting, so it would save that as a variable. It would then turn the fan on to full temperature, to full speed, and then, put a delay in for 10 seconds, and then set it back to whatever it was originally set to.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly how I would do it now, too. That's right, though. Sorry, you asked earlier about the craziest automation I've ever done, and I actually forgot probably the most intricate and interesting automation. And Phil, you and I have been chatting a little bit about cryptocurrency, so I thought you might think this was interesting.
Okay.
So I used to do a lot of cryptocurrency mining. I still do a little bit now, but I had a large mining farm in my basement with, around 100 graphics cards running 24 hours a day.
Wow.
Jeez.
Spending $1,000 plus a month on electricity, to mine. And when I first started, it kind of was a full-time job almost, keeping this stuff running. And I actually used not Home Assistant, but SmartThings, but you could do the same thing with Home Assistant. Actually, you could do a lot more now that I know what I could do. But, I would, each mining rig had its own API that would tell you kind of the hash rate it's running at and that kind of stuff. And so basically I had automation set up for each one of those that would say, hey, every minute, check what the hash rate is. And if it's below a certain amount, send a message to the OS to kill the software and restart it, right? And if after 5 minutes, if the hash rate doesn't come back up to where it's supposed to be, send a message to the OS to reboot. And after 5 minutes, if the hash rate doesn't come back up to where it's supposed to be, actually physically power off the miner, using a smart plug that they're all plugged. Each one was plugged into a smart plug.
Mm-hmm.
So it went from having to kind of deal with 2 or 3 crashes a day to not having to do anything ever because the automation system would just take care of it.
Yeah.
And, when mining was really profitable, I used to get really kind of distressed when stuff wasn't working, because it's like, if that isn't working, I'm not making $100 today off that thing I was planning on making, right? So
right.
I even had it like after it would go through that process, if it still doesn't come back, then wake me up. Like if I was sleeping, go ahead and wake me up so I can go downstairs.
Wow.
Wow.
I was on call for my own data center. It was crazy, right? And
that's funny. Yeah.
A completely self-healing mining rig in your basement that would wake you up if it was not happy.
Yeah. So and then I kind of went further where I wrote all these PowerShell scripts. I actually created virtual devices within my automation system, so I could switch from like mining one coin to another based on just clicking a button in the app.
Okay.
So I could say, right now I'm mining Ethereum, and I can click a button, and it would start mining like Monero. So it would send a message to the server, and it would say, "Hey, kill this mining software and start this other software." And so that was always pretty fun.
That's cool
to do. Yeah. And I also had controlled the fans in the room based off of the temperature.
Yeah, because I'm sure the rooms got pretty heated.
It got hot, but I was telling Phil earlier, like when it comes to mining and running it like a business, every penny counts, right? So
sure.
In the evenings, when it would get cooler outside, I didn't have to run the fans as much because the air was already cooler. So I had
crack open a window.
7,000 cubic feet per minute fan sucking air into the room from outside, and I could lower it to 3,000,
right?
Because it was cooler, right? And then same thing with the outtake fan on the other side of the room. I could lower that. So based on temperature of the room, I could save money. By lowering the fan speeds and that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of fun. It was like I didn't do it right away, but I was like I apply automation to everything else, and I was just getting annoyed with having to take care of stuff.
Yeah,
I could fix this, right? And so it was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
That was probably my biggest like orchestration, right? When I started getting down to being able to switch coins and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. That is very cool.
Yeah.
You could have sold your basement off as a cloud service.
Yeah, we actually used it for a few winters to heat the house. Like it was like having an 80,000 BTU furnace in the basement.
Absolutely, it was. Right? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And so you're based in Australia. I can't convert this to Celsius off the top of my head, but it was like I'd walk in on a daily basis. It's like 110 degrees Fahrenheit in that room.
Oh wow, that is hot.
That's roasting. Yeah, so that's about 43 degrees.
That's
Celsius.
In the 40s.
So,
yeah.
So I spent some time talking to HVAC people trying to figure out the most efficient way to cool because. Again, every penny counts.
Sure.
And some people buy air conditioners and things like that. And the advice I got was don't buy an air conditioner. Just keep the air moving in and out, right? Try to seal the room off from the rest of the house so you're not pulling cooler air from the places you live into this room so that you can just, suck it out the window. And so I sealed the room very well and I had, negative pressure in the room. So it was basically the outtake fan was actually at a higher rate than the intake.
Yep.
So it was always cooling more out than I could put in. And if I did that and had like a lot of air holes to the rest of the house, it would start sucking cool air from the rest of the house into that room.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you had to be very careful about how you did it to optimize and, make as much, spend as little on electricity and, that you could and, still kind of have this thing be a profitable venture. Right. And 2017, this was no problem. It was like, if I lose $5, who cares, right? But in 2018 and 2019, it was like, I'm spending, $1,200 a month on electricity, and I may be only making $1,300 worth of crypto, right? So, your profit margin started getting smaller and smaller, and you wanted to make sure that you got every penny you could. So SmartThings and home automation in general just kind of helped a lot there, right, with that.
That's cool.
And I'm guessing you would have had sensors to track, how much you're producing and all that, and you would be able to graph that in SmartThings, or if not, you'd be able to do it soon in Grafana.
Yeah, I didn't do it. I didn't do a whole lot of that because I didn't. The pools that you use for mining. If you don't know a lot about it, basically, it's hard to mine on your own. So it's better to kind of group up with a bunch of people and do it together and share the reward. So the pools that you would do that in, it actually tracked a lot of that for you, so you didn't have to do your own stuff. But I did use a smart app that logged my energy usage to Google Docs, so I could use that as part of my taxes. Right, that's an expense. So I was able to track on a per machine level how much electricity I was using. So I could say, well, our electric bill this month was, $480, and I know that 420 of that was from these mining rigs, and the rest of it came from just the rest of the house, right? So I did use that.
Okay.
That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, that's handy. Yeah.
Pay your taxes. You don't want the government coming after you later.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. No, that's right. Worth it.
No, that's awesome.
I think that the question I get asked most from people is, what are you going to do if you ever move? And it's all coming with me.
Yeah.
I know some people say like a smart house sells for more money, but the amount I spent on all those devices, I'm not going to get back as part of selling the house. So it's all coming with me. I keep telling my wife that like we don't plan on moving, but like if we move, it's all coming.
Yeah.
I saved all the old switches and all the old dimmers and all light bulbs and everything. It's just I've got them. So it's all coming with me. It'll take a week, but it's coming with me.
And then don't have the risk of, you move house and you've left someone with a very unique house that they may not know how to operate, and then your tech support.
Well, exactly, right. Then you start charging them.
Yeah. Actually, when I moved a few years ago here, the Nest stayed at that house, and I actually had the guy email me for a week asking me questions about how to configure the Nest. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the easiest device on the planet,
Yeah.
But
that's fine.
Actually, battery management is the biggest issue when you have this many devices.
True.
That's a big problem.
Yes. as a renter with a lot of battery devices, yes,
Yep.
it is. I am in the process of moving as much as I can to rechargeable batteries, just because I'm sick and tired of having to buy batteries every few months. But even then, just having to go around and take them out and fix them up, and then you've got button cells, different types of batteries. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't had a lot of success with rechargeable batteries and home automation devices, but I did. We have four Z-Wave blinds in our family room because they're behind like the couch and furniture, so they're really hard to open manually. So I got Z-Wave ones, and those each one uses like 8 AA lithium-ion batteries, and it would go through, each one would go through 8 batteries every couple of months, and it was just getting really expensive.
No.
So I actually hardwired those into like a security camera power supply.
Okay.
So now I don't have that problem. And oddly enough, I got locked out of my house the other week because my smart lock battery died. And so I kind of said, never again. And I'm actually in the process of hardwiring the smart lock to a power supply. So I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I found a way to do it, and I'm doing it. So I'll post some pictures in Discord or something, so you can at least see what I'm doing.
That's cool.
That's cool. Yeah. Oh wow. So do you have one of those locks that you can put the battery, like the 9-volt battery, underneath to get some emergency power in to open it up the door?
No. So the way I'm doing it is basically, I like to do a lot of home renovation. So we bought a fixer-upper. And so what I basically did was I bought a whole new door. It's the door that goes from the kitchen to the garage. So I bought a whole new door and door frames that I'm going to put in because I need a new one anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I got a long drill bit, and I basically drilled a hole from one side of the door, like the long way, not the like where it's 1.5 inches thick, but from 36 inches from left to right. And I ran a wire in that direction into the door frame, and it's going to go down the side of the outside of the door frame, so you can't even see it because it's going to be in the wall, into the basement where I'm going to have a battery backup and it plugged into the wall down there to power the
That's
door.
Cool.
That's kind of how I'm doing it. And then basically you just make sure that your power supply is the same kind of amperage and voltage that the 4 AA batteries would provide.
Yep.
Right.
So
Right.
I've already wired it up and it works fine. I just have to install the door now. So.
Wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's it's a lot of work, but it's I'm sure it's rewarding at the end of the day, right? So
yeah, it's kind of like never again will I get locked out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
How do you plan on taking that door with you to the next house?
That door will probably stay, but the smart lock will go. I don't know. We'll see. I might leave that one device just because it's cool. The person can use it, but
yeah.
Eric, thank you so much for taking the time. Good luck going around and clicking all those buttons when you're repairing those devices. That's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys.
See you guys later.
Cheers.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics that we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.